Well, hello and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How the devil are you? It's another week. Welcome to another episode of the Remote Schooling SOS live stream. And fantastic that you could join us. So tonight's topic is pretty straightforward. It's half term for much of the UK. And I always think on one hand, half time is a cause for celebration, and especially through what we've been through now, I kind of like a break from the relentless monotony of the homeschooling that we've been doing. But also, it's increasingly, it's just another pressure, it's another demand, another thing that parents have to manage, as well as trying to think about how they're going to do their work, how they're going to keep the family entertained. All of these things come together. So we thought tonight, admittedly at the end of half term, what a great conversation would be about how do we find a better balance. There's some slight comedy in that, because my wife, actually, just as I was getting set up for the show, she said to me, "So Dave, what's this week's show about?" And I said, "Well, it's about finding a better balance." And she kind of looked at me in the way that only your partner can and raised her eyebrows and just went, "Seriously, you're talking about find a better balance?" So that's my plea to tonight's guests, is to help me, please help me find a better balance. Let's meet tonight's panel. So, first of all, let me do what is always my pleasure to do, is to introduce you to the fabulous Vicky Shotbelt. Vicky, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. And I'm chuckling to myself at the thought of talking this evening about finding a better balance. My house is in chaos this evening. The dog's going wild. I feel like I'm living the brand, Dave. This is going to help me as much as it helps anybody watching, I hope.
Yeah, so you see what I think, Vicky, is these aren't so much to help the audience. This is more our own personal therapy, right? Sort of, it's our own personal self-help group. So with that in mind, let me introduce you to our two guests. We have with us Simon. How are you doing, Simon?
Hello there, mate. I'm good.
And Claire. How are you doing, Claire?
Yeah, I am fine. I'm very excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Hold that thought. We'll try and live up to that. So what's always nice for us, so I guess we've got Simon Harris, you're from the Men Behaving Dadly Facebook group. Claire Bulkand, you're from the you have a Family Lockdown Tips and Ideas Facebook group. What I'd love from each of you is just give us a quick potted history of how you ended up where you did, creating your platforms and the kind of things that you do on your platform. Simon, if we could start with you, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, cool. I mean, not to be pedantic, but it's actually the Man Behaving Dadly Facebook page. I know everybody ends up trying to confuse it with that old BBC comedy. Unfortunately, it's just like a fact of life, unfortunately. But no, it's the Man Behaving Dadly Facebook page that I set up just because I fancied having a crack at parent blogging, for better or worse. It just kind of snowballed into this thing, basically, that I'm doing now. But also, interesting, we do actually have a Facebook group off the back of it called Parents Behaving Kindly, that we sort of, it's still quite a small group, but people do kind of keep up the childhood mental health element in there quite well. And then we do have other Facebook groups that are linked to all the pages that I run, where we just generally try and help parents out who just want to chat about anything, really. So it's just kind of like a massive ecosystem of pages and groups that keep me stuck to my phone way too much.
Excellent. I love that. Thanks, Simon. Claire, how about you?
Sure. Well, the glue to my phone, just to keep that analogy going. So I run Family Lockdown Tips and Ideas, and it's a Facebook group I set up on a whim on the 13th of March in 2020. I read an article. I was actually at home. One of my daughters was asleep, and the other one I needed to pick up from school. And I just thought, I'll just spend another 5 minutes on my phone, as you do. And this article popped up, and it said, it's talking about what we're going to do, what a family's going to do if lockdown happens. And at that point, lockdown hadn't happened. And I inwardly panicked, and I thought, what on earth am I going to do if I'm stuck at home with my kids? So I set this group up. I'm a secondary school teacher. I set this group up. My kids are 2 and 6. And it turns out that there were probably a lot of people just like me out there who heard lockdown, family, kids at home, panicked and joined me. And the group sort of, I suppose, mushroom clouded into 1 million members within 3.5 weeks of being set up. And we're still bobbing along at 1.1 million members globally, all talking about, everything family, really, and lockdown. It turns out that, when you're a family and you're in lockdown, life doesn't stop. You don't stop cleaning or doing the dishes or thinking about activities. It's all the same. It's just that you've got less space. So yeah, it's a bit of a melting pot of everything family related, with lots of lockdown specific tips and ideas too.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And it's one of the things, Vicky, we've talked about a lot. You know, I love how the technology is able to help us create these communities of people who just come together with a common need. And it might be a horrible need, you know, how to cope with lockdown, or it might just be to enjoy both the challenges, but also the joy of parenting in through a pandemic. So I'm going to start selfishly. Sorry, Vicky, were you going to say something?
No, I was just going to pick up on that point that Claire made about your group being global, because I think that's the other thing about, you know, we are always looking for silver linings, aren't we, Dave? I know you're a lifelong optimist, but that has been a bit of a silver lining. We've connected families around the world, and the experience is such a shared experience. I think that's been a small positive in a not very positive set of circumstances.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, Vicky. And I hope that kind of persists as well long after this, is that sort of sense of companionship that we all share in sort of parenting and bringing sort of people together. I'd quite like to selfishly start with my favourite topic, if you're okay. So remember, we're finding a balance during half term. And so I want to talk about screen time. Because screen time on one side, it's like really easy, right? Yeah, knock yourself out. You know, have another 3 days non-stop on the console. Fantastic. Or oh my God, you're now spending all of your working time, school time, in front of a screen. You're not going to spend, you know, your holiday time in front of a screen. What's happening now in terms of screen time, Vicky? Is there sort of research? There are things that we should be thinking about, the ways of thinking about screen time that are helpful in this context?
I knew you were going to ask me this question, and it's actually quite a difficult one to answer, because before lockdown, the research, basically the good research, pointed to the fact that what you should be really caring about was the quality of the screen time, that they had a diverse diet, that children weren't just sitting, you know, endlessly consuming video after video on YouTube or the same game over and over and over again. It was about quality of screen time, not quantity of screen time. I think the world's been so different. A parent said to me this week, it feels a little bit like we've catapulted our children forward into office life, and now they just spend their whole day sitting looking at a screen doing work, and then they have more screen time. But on the other hand, it's absolutely vital for them, for their socializing, for everything else. So it's really difficult to give good definitive answers. I think you just have to be child-led. If your child is happy, and if your child is still having chances to be away from the screen, that's more important actually than research that was done before lockdown onto how many hours you're supposed to let a child sit in front of a screen.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, Claire, maybe if we could come to you, because what I'm really interested in is you've kind of got both ends of the spectrum, in the sense you've got the teacher's perspective, so you know what you've been experiencing through term time, and then with your own kids about how you manage them and their screen time in half term. How's that been for you?
Oh, well, I think it's a challenge. I think it's a universal challenge. It's not one that's, you know, unique to any one person. We're all experiencing it. And there's something really validating when you feel that you're part of a struggle that really everyone is in. I have this battle constantly with my kids, and my kids are quite little, so I've got much more sort of maybe power over them to say, no, we're not going to do that, we're going to do something else. But I think it does get harder as children do get older. I think when I think about screen time, I think about it quite, you know, holistically, because my sort of way of parenting and my approach in the classroom is always that the environment and the atmosphere and the ambience can actually kind of shift and change the way that we do things, whether it's using a computer, whether it's doing an activity. And I think, you know, if you're a kid, no matter what age you are, and you've got a stressy parent, I mean, no one likes stressy parents, no matter what age you are. If you've got a stressy parent saying you should be off your screen, you should be doing this is really bad, and kind of handing over that parental guilt and giving it to the child in any form, or even the teacher doing it, you know, well, make sure it's, you know, you're using your time valuably, and make sure you're doing this, and kind of putting that pressure on there. I think that is a sort of a negative environment to be using screens in. And so I'm doing my best as a teacher, but at the moment, fundamentally as a parent, because that's where I really see it happening, that when we use screens, and I'm not afraid of screens, I don't think screens are bad. I think we need to embrace them, and just like you were saying, in a challenging and exciting way as much as we can, but not to kind of add an emotional level to the use of screens in our children's lives, because I can't see the value in that. So, and I also know, and this is again my own experience, you know, I'm a better parent. I'm a generally better person when I feel happy and like I'm doing the right thing. And I might not be, but if I think I am, then I'm going to kind of pass that on. And if parents feel, even if what their kids are doing is totally okay, but if parents feel that guilt, you know, that pressure, oh, I shouldn't be doing it because I know so-and-so doesn't do that. Or I've just seen someone on the internet doing a colour coordinated craft activity. I'm a terrible parent. I think that is where the problem is. And that maybe there's a little bit of a conversation about, you know, screen time's okay if it's like this, and you certainly shouldn't beat yourself up about it. That's what I'd like to see. So I try not to give myself a hard time. And also, I remind myself all the time, so the last thing I'll say, coronavirus and this pandemic is temporary. It's not forever. It will end. And that's my light at the end of the tunnel with screen time too.
Yeah, I love that. Simon, what about you and your lot? How have you been finding it?
Well, do you know, we've kind of got this weird evolution in action with our kids. I mean, we've got three who are all very tablet savvy, 6, 4 and 2, Luke, Emma and James, and they're very tablet savvy, and luckily we've got the Amazon Fire tablet. I mean, sort of flying it. Other tablets are obviously available, but the great thing about the Amazon tablets is you can literally throw them down the stairs and Amazon will send you another one. They've got a really good, you know, backup policy on them. But the thing
don't try that at home, guys. Just take his word for it.
Especially if you haven't got the little rubber covers on as well, because, you know, you have to send Amazon some kind of proof that it's been, you know, destroyed, not just a pile of ash and glass. But no, they do use the tablets an awful lot, and we've never kind of said, okay, 30 seconds or 30 minutes, go, and we set a timer. We've found is just by letting them get on with it and enjoy their tablets, they kind of, when they get bored with them, they just sort of put them down and walk off more and more. At the start of lockdown, they were very tablet, but now literally we've noticed, especially with Emma in the middle, she'll sort of go on it for about half an hour, play all her little makeup and princess games and things like that, and then she'll just pop it down and wander off and do something else. But then she'll come back to it an hour later. I mean, she never remembers to plug it back in again and charge it, obviously. That's something else we've had to sort of hammer into them. But it's weird how we don't really regulate it as such. We just kind of let them get on with it. I mean, again, the remote learning side of it, schools send home doodle maths activities and stuff like that. So they are generally using their tablets for good educational stuff sometimes, as well as just watching YouTube videos. But one thing that I have found, actually, that is a bit of a pitfall is that they can obviously use the tablet in the Amazon Fire environment, which is heavily controlled in terms of what you can download. But as soon as you go onto the YouTube app that comes with it, not so much. As in, they could literally stumble on any video. So one thing that both me and my wife Rachel have developed as parents is we've got this ear for the videos such as, you know, the Peppa Pigs, for instance, where it turns into like Psycho all of a sudden, and we've been trained into the exact sound of the videos that they shouldn't be watching. Literally, you'll see me run across the room at 50 miles an hour, which is a massive achievement for me to go, no, grab it, no, sorry, can't watch that. Again, that doesn't always, you know, that does make them anxious sometimes, but, you know, it's just kind of like the best of a bad situation, really, what this pandemic have done. It's just made all families value screen time more, but also the right screen time, as in the right screen time for your kid. The only person who knows what the answer is your kid, I think. And I'm just quite thankful that they've all kind of grown up with the ability to find their way around Android and things like that, which we didn't have, obviously, when we were growing up. So I think it's just good that they're kind of finding their own balance. When they get bored, tablet goes down, they'll just wander off and do something else.
Do you know what? You've all made me really happy. I love that. So, and I'll tell you why, right? This whole concept of being child-led, I think I love that, right? So that makes a load of sense to me. But as a technologist, what I'm desperate for is a world where all of us, but especially our kids, are confident in their relationship with technology and not consumed by it. So they enjoy it and they immerse themselves in it, but they're equally able to say, do you know, that was fine for that. I'm actually going to go and do something else now. And it's just so nice to hear that some of that's going on. And I think it's a message that doesn't get perpetuated enough, because we have this very, and we're right, as parents, to be concerned about the impact of not so much screen time, but what our kids might be engaging with or seeing or hearing, all that sort of stuff, that we forget that so much of this, and look, Vicky, I know you smiled when we started talking about family settings, because that was what we talked about last week a lot, which is there's no family setting in the world that's going to solve this problem, but actually giving your kids the comfort and the confidence to be able to navigate themselves with your stewardship seems to me to be the best way through this all.
It is. I mean, again, one thing that I've been guilty of, maybe back in March, not so much now, is I just find myself doing this. I'll be like, come on kids, time to get off the tablets, too much screen time, but I'm literally doing it from behind my own phone screen. And it's just not good.
I think that's something, Simon, as all parents, I love that. I have found myself doing that too many times to mention. So it's not even a conversation I dare have anymore, because I have no credibility in that conversation. Okay, so I'm going to move on, and I think one of the reasons that we scheduled this conversation for this week was in sort of reading between the lines of a lot of the conversations in a lot of the online forums, and certainly a lot of the feedback that I know, Vicky, you and the team at Parent Zone were getting, was sort of an elevated level of stress from parents who were already struggling to manage their workload and remote schooling. And maybe, and let's paint maybe a slightly worse scenario. There were some people, typically single parents, who weren't getting much respect from their employer, who were really, really struggling. But even if you're not at that sort of level, this whole concept of how we sort of juggle the school requirements, the work requirements, or even, half term makes it worse because you feel guilty because you're not doing something constructive with your kids, something that creating memories. Do you know what I mean? When I'm trying to get through a work, the last thing I need is the stress of thinking, well, what bloody memories can I create now? Do you know what I mean? I don't know, Vicky, what do you think about that? Are there things that we can talk about? Is there research that showed about the impact of, what we've heard from parents during lockdown?
Yeah, and we did some research with parents during the first lockdown. I mean, it'd be interesting to redo it now, actually, because I think, third lockdown in, parents will be even more stressed, I would say. But there are a few standout things. One of them, a quarter of parents just said, we would like some recognition. We'd like people to realise how difficult this is. And that recognition needs to come from government, but it also needs to come from our employers. We just need people to recognise that parents are having to juggle an awful lot. So for me, that's a big takeout. We've also got parents about a third of parents who are saying that their own job had become much more difficult. It was really hard for them to continue to perform all of the functions of their job in the context of homeschooling and doing everything else. So parents who are saying that they had observed their children's mental health getting worse during lockdown. So another really big worry and a really big stress. And I think, just to kind of summarize what the research is telling us, it's that this has been a particularly difficult period for parents juggling all of this stuff, and they are not getting enough support or even enough basic recognition.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, that was almost a rant. You can tell I get quite cross about the lack of support that parents get.
Well, yeah, and do you know what, Vicky? I think you're right to be to rant about it. I mean, in a sense, that's kind of why we're here on this live stream, because I just, from my perspective as a parent, but specifically as a technologist, I couldn't see people helping in the right kind of way. Now, I'm not going to say for a minute that I think we've solved the problem, right? But just to provide more resources, to get people to sort this out. Claire, if I could be playful, from a teacher's perspective, surely, I mean, this has been an easy week for you. You've had a week off, right?
Oh, absolutely. I have been having margaritas by 11 a.m. No, in all seriousness, what I think has become quite obvious during all of this, particularly for parents, is that teaching is not limited to the lessons in which children are taught, and as a teacher, I've spent a lot of my time in the evenings over half term working. I think what is interesting, just to put a positive spin on it for a minute, because I know I completely understand how it's been so hard as a parent. I've also been homeschooling, and it's so hard to do, your job properly. It's so hard to do it and maintain your own mental health and your children's mental health. But there's certainly been a coming together of parents with schools and understanding, what goes into my child's education, and how do I observe them learn? What do I see them struggle with, and what do I also see them really triumph with? And as someone who thought I knew my 6-year-old really quite well, I'm a history teacher by trade, and I love reading and I love stories, and it turns out my 6-year-old does not like history, but she loves maths. And I would never have been able to tell you this had I not spent a week, trying to do some lessons with her that had been helpfully sent by her school. And so, whilst that challenge is there, obviously the complete picture is a ball of frustration. But there are these little kind of chinks of light for me that sort of have illuminated, might change our perspective and our way of thinking about, certainly about, you raised schools, certainly about school, going forward, the role of teachers, the role of education, the role of lessons, all of it. And I think that that's something to take in a positive.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen consistently in these conversations, Claire, the importance of building a very different relationship with the school, and the teachers, and how that pays off. And it's funny because what you were describing there with math, I had the same epiphany. I'm now much more involved in my son's education. It's not just, I don't just drop him off in the morning and pick him up at night anymore. Actually, it's the ambient noise in the house when he's having his lessons. And I'm actually quite grateful for that, because not only am I learning stuff, fantastic, I feel like I'm in sync with where he's at and what he's doing, and so we can find ways of exploring some of the topics. And he rolls his eye at me every time, but I'll find a way of bringing physics into the conversation, or maths, or whatever it might be. But I think it's really good for us to have that insight and awareness. Simon, I know it's probably slightly different for you because your kids, or two of your kids are sort of preschool, aren't they? But
no, school.
Oh, okay.
I've got 2 in school, 1 in preschool.
Okay. So you've had a little bit of this then, and this whole concept of juggling sort of work and all that. How's that been as a family?
I mean, I'm quite fortunate to an extent, because the majority of work that I do Facebook social media management for a few companies, and also a collaboration with our local authority as well. And I've been quite fortunate in the sense that it's not been shift based. It's been in the sense of the work needs doing, I'll get it done when I can. So I've been able to, obviously my wife does an awful lot as well. An awful lot more than me, actually. Sometimes it's just the way we have to juggle it all up. It's just the way it is, even though she's 8 months pregnant right now as well. So she's kind of sort of running around trying to keep everything else running. But it's just been a case of, there have been some days when either of the kids have been up for doing hours of home learning, and there have been some days when they've been kind of up for doing a bit. And there have been some, especially when the snow came down the other week, where it's been like just a complete sort of write-off. Okay, your homework today, you're going to learn about physics and biology and chemistry, possibly by building a snowman and watching it melt. Because literally, as soon as the snow came down, that was it. Everything was just a write-off. And tell you what, and again, the whole respect for teachers and respect for schools in general, I've seen absolutely skyrocket. Even when people were galvanised by Gavin Williamson saying, if you want to raise concerns about the school standard of home learning, please complain to Ofsted. I thought, come on, that was just a low move. But the whole kind of respect, when as soon as the snow came down, the home learning from school that came back was just kind of, the snow has come down, we really want you to go out and enjoy it. It's so important to get as much fresh air as you can at the moment. So it's just a kind of, not so much, giving up because the snow had come down, but kind of like, look, this is what's happening, embrace it. Everyone's excited, just go on with it. And I've just got so much respect now, even more respect for teachers and the work they were carrying out. And that's why on my page for the last few months, I've done everything possible to fight back against the absolute non-truths that are out there about, teachers are in lockdown, drinking margaritas, as you were saying, and just generally living it up, doing the occasional spreadsheet. There you go, get on with it. Every teacher that I know has said it has been anything ranging from challenging to hell. I'm just being honest from what I've heard. And the fact that the parents who are ignorant about it all are now in a minority from what you can see on Facebook, as opposed to the screaming majority beforehand, I think that's obviously a sign that progress has been made. But it's just a perception basically, and I think it's important that all parents know just how much of a massive haul this has been for both teachers and parents alike.
Vicky, let me come to you. And so, we're talking about the stress of half term, and we're talking about it at a point in which there's only a day left of half term. What's really more important for me, what do you think we can learn from this experience? We're going into a uncertain period of time. Nobody really knows whether March 8th is March 8th or some other date. What sort of, do you think there's things that we've learned from the last few weeks that we can just use to help apply and get us through the next few weeks?
I think, it's so unsettling, isn't it, for parents and for children actually not knowing what the date's going to be, when they're going to be going back, and that might be completely unavoidable, but helping children live with uncertainty is one of the really difficult things I think that parents need to do. I suppose there are a couple of things, actually. I think we four are probably all pretty lucky because, we use technology. We have technology in the house. English is our first language. We've probably got a space that we can set up a computer somewhere and sit and work at. There are lots and lots of families. I was talking to a mum who said that the worksheets that were coming home from school were English is not her first language. She couldn't help her child. And I suppose what I take away from it is patience to let children recover, and understanding that children are incredibly resilient and they will be okay, but we have got to give them time to readapt, because they're not all going to go back into school on March the 8th, sit at their desks and behave like they did March the 8th last year. They've been through a huge upheaval, as have working parents, as has everybody else, and we are going to have to give them some time, I think, to adjust back.
Yeah.
So, sorry, actually, can I just make a point about the tech side of it as well, actually, because that's been a massive hurdle. From what I've heard, and again, a while ago, when it kind of became clear that there were, and again, you kind of have to forget what a lot of people say on Facebook, because again, a lot of people have a misconception, but there were so many families out there who either didn't have any devices at home that were suitable, or they had a device at home. Maybe they had one sort of, what they called, those old Dell sort of notebooks with a huge, great big thickness on them, where they were about 10, 15 years old. And they were dividing these devices up between 2 or 3 kids. They were all having to kind of fight over them. And when that became clear on a local level, we had one story, somebody that I know who works in one of the local food banks said that both the parents are disabled, and they finally managed to organise a loan of a Chromebook from school. And of course, Chromebooks are ideal because of all the tech that's already built into them, but they were forcing the kids to sign a bit of paper saying that they're liable for they're basically liable for £500 if anything goes wrong. And I'm not saying that this is the fault of the school, because it's not, because obviously the schools are working within the budgets that they're given from local authority and everything else like that. But the kid was too scared to sign the bit of paper saying he was liable for up to £500. So in the end, the Chromebook went back. And because of this kind of thing, we actually set up a small GoFundMe. It was just a joke one, actually, at first. He just said, let's club together and buy Chris Whitty his own Next Slide Please clicker, because he's not got one. He's saved so much time if he had one. But what we actually did with the money, we said, look, if Chris Whitty doesn't want a clicker, it was about £1,200 in the end, which was great.
That's amazing.
The problem was, it was great, but we couldn't get hold of any laptops from anywhere, because all the companies locally that were doing the reconditioning weren't getting into offices to get them out. So there was a real issue. So in the end, there's a really great bunch of guys near me called East Essex Hackspace, where they've taken over an old council outbuilding and they've set up a massive electronics workshop. And they sort of teach skills and all sorts, coding skills, electronic skills. And what they do is they go around the community picking up these sorts of tatty, battered old laptops and desktops, and they literally just do them up, recondition them, buy a load of cheap Windows licenses, or even, actually no, not even Windows, or even sort of Ubuntu, Linux, stuff like that that's free. And they literally go around the community grabbing loads of them, doing them up, replacing components, hard drives, wiping them clean for GDPR, and then they're now working with sort of local schools. So we ended up giving the money to them. And then sure enough, everybody that we were hearing about who needed one was getting not a brand new laptop, but just one that would get them through.
Yeah.
And they were so massively grateful, and so many people were literally scared to come forward and ask because there was such a stigma about admitting that they didn't have the tech at home. So it was just really warming to see so many different elements of the community coming together. And this has been replicated all over the country now. You're hearing about these hackspace projects and literally just people stepping in to help. And again, people were screaming about the schools for not supplying the equipment, but it's not at all. Schools would supply the equipment if they had the cash to do so. Again, we could get into a political argument for hours on this, but again, it was more just a case of everybody coming together to sort the problem out and forget about all the background, just literally get it done, and that's been really heartwarming to see.
Yeah, just cracking on. I think the magic in all of that, though, is how do we knit together all of these disparate sort of collections of people trying to do it. That's we talked about this on a previous show. We need sort of a national scale of how we plumb all this stuff together, so that it doesn't matter where you are in our society, in our country. If you need something, because there is somebody who can help, and that's what we need to do. Just on the interest of time, I'm going to move this on. There's one more topic I want to hit, and then we're going to do our quickfire Q&A. And I'm quite pleased about it. This is a conversation about ideas to entertain our kids. And so, we're more than halfway through lockdown, and actually I say more than halfway through lockdown, who knows? We're certainly more than halfway through half term. So it could be either, I don't know. It's all a blur. So what I'm looking for is ideas to entertain, and I'm actually, if you'll forgive me, I'm going to go first because this is a conversation that I was going to have in my sort of regular technology top tips. I was all set up to do this, and I realised there wasn't actually much technology in it, so I thought it'd be better as a conversation. The big debate I always have with my lad, and he's 15, right? So it's slightly different. Is the difference between consumption and creation. So I love that he loves gaming, and I love that he loves watching live streams, and I love that he watches YouTube. But what I want to see him doing is, as well as consuming that stuff, make some stuff. Like start live streaming, make your own video on YouTube, do stuff like that. And that's been a really helpful discussion point for us so what could we do and how we could do it? And again, look, I'm in a really nice position. I know lots of things about technology and we can create things, but that whole point about creativity with technology is kind of how we entered into it. But I'd love, Simon, Claire, Vicky, I'd love your ideas on things that you think you can do to engage your kids, or things that have worked for your kids. Claire, maybe let's start with you. What are the things that have really worked well for you?
Well, I mean, I feel a bit shameless in doing this, but I actually wrote a book about things to do in lockdown. And I'll just flash it up very quickly here, but there you go.
It was almost like that was set up, Claire. Do you know what I mean? We almost knew that was going to happen.
It was actually in the drawer. I wasn't even sure it was even up there. I think what I discovered, I wrote a book in lockdown about what to do in lockdown with your kids, because I became so obsessed with how to fill time. And I'm a planner, I itemize things, I create lists. And I thought timetables would really help my kids. And it turned out that timetables did help my kids a little bit, but it really actually helped me. And so what I try and do is I try and think about the different sorts of things that, rather than standalone activities, like the different kinds of activities that you could do. Have you got something that can get kids up and busy, whether it's chucking your cushions over your living room floor and pretending the floor is lava? Have you got something when you go outside? It doesn't have to be for a walk. It can be a photo challenge, trying to find numbers 1 to 20 on, doors, and then creating a little photo frame of like doors, or, creating the alphabet, or, a scavenger hunt is a very sort of traditional idea, but you can make a really kooky one about your own little neighborhood and see what changes over the space of a month, 2 months. And I've been amazed, I have to say, and this is something that's come out in family lockdown tips and ideas an awful lot. The idea of, when you can't go out, can you bring the outside in? And so me and my kids have had quite a lot of fun recreating the things that we quite like to do that we can't. We haven't done camping, but I did buy a tent to do camping in my living room, so that's banked for later. But we've recreated our own kind of posh afternoon teas at the kitchen table. We did a stargazing party, and we listened to music that had the word star or space in it, and we ate chocolate. There's a lot of chocolate named after Milky Way, Mars bars, you name it. And we tried some magic tricks. But I think one of the things that Vicky mentioned, obviously, is the well-being of children during this time. And, you know, it's good for children to have unstructured time. It's good for children to have, you know, dare I say it, get bored and then figure out themselves what to do next. But mine do like to have a list of options. So I actually stick on my fridge. So something, they can go and have a look. And if they don't like them, they don't have to do them. But I think with so much unstructured time that we've had, you know, having a kind of launch pad where you've got something to work with has been quite handy for us. And just making sure they're varied, inside, outside, sitting down, standing up, creative, or simply cutting, sticking. We spent a morning cutting up all our old Christmas chocolate boxes and turning them into jigsaws. Smaller pieces for the 2-year-old, as in like 3, and then bigger pieces for the smaller one, and much smaller pieces for the older child, and then literally piecing them back together. And we lost 2 hours just cutting up old packaging, and that didn't involve glue or scissors or glitter or any of that jazz. And it was just, I would never have done that had it not been for lockdown. So I think I've rediscovered a love for trying new things out as well. So yeah, for me, it's all about variety.
Yeah, I mean, 2 things, especially in what you said there. The boredom is massively underrated, I think, in all of our lives. So much for that. And second, I'm smiling when you talk about building the outside in. One of the things that we're lucky enough to do quite often is to go and visit my beloved Canada. And it's normally this time of year, right? And so I said to my wife and my son, look, given that we can't go, why don't we recreate the 9-hour flight, right? You know, we can set the front room up, we can binge watch like 9 hours of movies. And, you know, in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, somebody's walking past bringing me a gin and tonic and a meal every half an hour. And of course, in their minds, guess who the stewardess is? Yeah, Muggins here, right? So we're not bloody doing that. All right. Anyway, sorry, Simon. How about you?
Again, 2 things actually I can think of, because again, going back to your point, Dave, about the live streaming, and again, Luke, because he's 6, he's into all this sort of Roblox quite heavily at the moment and stuff like that. And again, he wanted to try and make his own one. And see, for me, being technologically minded, it was quite straightforward for me to sort it out with the second camera, the screen capturing, and stuff like that. And then when I just sort of gave him his own little YouTube channel, and it's quite easy, and it's quite good now that if you specify that videos are made for children, the comments don't even get turned on. You can turn them off yourself, but by default all comments are turned off, so there's no danger of him wandering onto one of his own videos and seeing somebody being really nasty, which I think is really important, because obviously he can read quite well at his age. That's obviously quite an important thing. But also the great thing about that was, as soon as I put that, I shared a link on my own blog, because, you know, I'm like, oh, you know, here's a shameless plug for Luke's YouTube channel, Luke Super Gaming, and when we were on there, loads of people commented underneath saying, do you know what, my kids wanted to do this for ages, but I haven't got a clue how to superimpose their face onto the rest of the video. And it was quite, I mean, for me, it's quite straightforward, but saying, look, if you've got a Mac, you can do it for free with X, Y, and Z. If you've got a Windows computer, there's this software, OBS, all that. So it was really nice to engage with loads of people who got in touch saying, my kid wants to do this. And even parents who just want to make the videos and not stick them online, their kids just want to take part. And so it was really good for me just to kind of give that really simple advice to loads of people, saying, look, this is how you make a YouTube-style gaming video. But also, one other thing that I found with, well, Luke in particular, but the other 2 get involved sometimes as well, is they've suddenly discovered that they like to cook, which I think is quite a cool thing, because we get those little ready-made meal bags you get off, you know, there's so many different companies that do them now. But the reason that Luke likes it is because you get like a little recipe card and you read through it, and he likes to sort of help me with the instructions and say, chop that, cut this, and he likes to smell things and handle sloppy raw meat sometimes as well. He just likes getting involved with the cookery side of it. But of course, because obviously I've got a blog, it's almost like I sort of end up monetising my own child, because we put a link on the blog saying if you want a voucher off your next box, click here. And so we've got this. I think we're good for meal boxes now until about the middle of September, just because of the sheer number of people that have clicked through it. But the great thing as well, we actually made little cooking videos as well sometimes, just saying of him helping me with not anything hot or sharp, obviously, but he just starts getting involved. And of course, as soon as he does it, the other two kids wander in now, and they want to sort of mix stuff and bash stuff. And again, until lockdown happened, they never helped me in the kitchen, which I'm quite ashamed of almost. It's like, well, why is it taking a global pandemic to teach my kids that there's more to life than a Happy Meal? You know, it's just things like that, really. And it's just amazing how, amongst so much negativity, these little, like you're saying with your group about the lockdown tips, so many things that we would have thought would have been massively obvious before lockdown have suddenly happened. And we're like, oh yeah, maybe I should have been doing that kind of thing years ago. And it's kind of like, there is an element of guilt to it. But at the same time, it's just nice that it's happening full stop.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Can I just add in something really beautiful on what you were saying? Some of the really most heartwarming posts that we've had in the group, and we've had hundreds and hundreds of thousands of posts in the last year, have been when parents have just done something really simple with their kids that they would normally do, and it has involved their children, and it has awakened in them how life could be, and they've shared that, and it's been replicated, and it's kind of validated the original poster, but it's certainly shown other people how they could maybe live a little bit more mindfully, or involve their family more in the running of the family, and that builds and bonds the family. And you're so right, it has taken perhaps a pandemic to do that, but for me that is one of the silver linings, if we can take a silver lining from this. That family time, you know, has created lovely situations for so many people. Hard ones too, but some nice ones.
Wow, and it's just great to see that. Vicky, I know you guys have got some great resources. Can you just talk us through what the Parent Zone team have put together for this?
I'm really disappointed actually, because I feel as though I ought to be able to show you a book now, and I haven't written a book, Claire. I'm a total underachiever during lockdown. What we have done is create a lockdown hub that sits on our website. So lots and lots of ideas there for people who've maybe run out of things to stick on the back of the fridge door and say, try this. But a couple of things, just shout outs for maybe the slightly older child when it comes to technology. I don't think we talk about podcasts enough. I think we need to talk about podcasts more, Dave.
Yeah,
because
I'm up for that.
For older young people, they're really getting into them. They're creating a lot of them themselves, and it's away from the screen. It's all about the ears. So I think, you know, podcasts, if your child's getting a bit too much screeny, don't forget the old ears. And the other one is that learning new skills. I think what you talked about with cookery applies to so many things, whether it's learning how to make felted animals, or how to play an instrument, or where you have that opportunity to blend what you can learn online and do something physical. So yeah, loads and loads of stuff that we've got available. All these ideas sitting on our hub.
Oh, that's wonderful. Right, so musical interlude, and then we're going to be into our quick fire questions, and we're nearly done. So we're into our parent submitted questions. We've got two crackers for you this week. The first is from Joanna in Cambridgeshire, who asks about her daughter has a desk to work on but never uses it, possibly because it's always covered in clutter. Must be our house. She seems to prefer to sit on the floor or the sofa to do her learning, but I don't think it's a good way for her to work. What do you reckon? Anybody want to take that sort of posture while working?
Can I jump in with that first? Because I feel like I have to, because I am actually married to a physiotherapist, and this is one of his absolute bugbears, and we argue about it all the time. So there's a big bit of me that goes, if your child's comfortable, it doesn't matter if she's sitting on a cushion on the floor or she's sitting at a desk. It really doesn't matter. The important thing is that she's comfy, she's engaged, she's happy. But I have to caveat that with the practical stuff that I know I can hear my husband saying in my ear. Make sure that the screen height's correct. Make sure that they're not, they haven't got their chin down all the time, because you're going to get bad chin injury. So there are postural things that I do think parents need to pay a little bit of attention to make sure that physically your child is in a good position whilst they're working.
Yeah, I think perhaps I'm not the best person to ask at the moment because I'm currently sat on a bedside table, looking at a laptop screen, resting on a bed on top of an Amazon Prime box because the lighting in this place is just atrocious. But one thing that I've noticed actually, when my 2-year-old in particular is holding his tablet, he will get into some positions that would make a mountain goat go, "Oh my God, how's he doing that?" As in, he will straddle furniture. But I'm not talking about for a couple of minutes. He'll literally be there for hours, like he's doing like a advanced Joe Wicks plank workout. It's just so bizarre how they do it. But then I suppose at this, again, it might be something to watch for the future. But I just generally find that literally we do have to move them away from the telly sometimes, and right on top of it, and things like that. But I think in general, I think if kids are uncomfortable, they'll tend to move. It just might take them longer to realise they're not comfortable. I mean, when you get to our age, literally you spend 3 seconds in the wrong place and you're going to pay for it for a fortnight. But I think at their age, they'll just kind of, they'll kind of correct themselves eventually. Again, it's just the brightness is the main one, I think. I think it's the brightness when I'll go in and they'll be like, vroom, and I'll go, hang on, I'm just going to turn that down a little bit. And now, thankfully, my 6-year-old and the 4-year-old, they know how just to go, just turn the brightness down a bit. But yeah, it's just kind of, they'll just correct themselves eventually, I find.
I've got a couple of really quick things on this. The first one, I suppose, is when you send your children to school, you kind of expect them to be in an environment that's sort of conducive to learning. And so when they're at home, their home environment has not been their place of learning ever really in their lives before, unless you've originally homeschooled your children. And so creating a zone that is obviously a kind of learning zone in any way that's sort of separate from some of the other aspects of family life, I found that really, really helpful, making sure that, even the basics like pencils are sharpened the night before, or, things are plugged in so they're ready to go in the morning. Little tweaks like that could make it better. And we've seen on Family Lockdown Tips and Ideas, lots of really creative kind of like workstations for kids, and getting kids to be involved in like almost planning and designing the space in which they're going to work. Like, do they want to have a little snack corner? Do they want to have a plant from the garden? Do they want to, have a particular glass that they're going to drink water from when they're doing their work? And so getting the kid involved in designing that space, we've seen has been quite popular as well. So that could be a tip for that lady who sent that question in.
Yeah, I love that. And again, it's that sort of classic about getting them involved in it, and it's half the battle. So we're off to Glasgow now, and this is from Letitia in Glasgow, and apparently she's pulling her hair out. So sorry to hear that, Letitia. Let's see if we can help you out. And actually, Simon and Claire, I think this is going to be right up your street. So I've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and it's hard enough getting the 5-year-old to concentrate and work at any time, and he certainly can't be left alone. But the 3-year-old isn't at school, so doesn't have anything to do. Keeping him entertained while trying to teach the other one is possible. And if I just put in front of the TV, my older boy refuses to work because he thinks it's unfair. Help. Claire, let's start with you. Any top tips here?
Oh, Letitia, I'm with you. I'm here. I am you. I am in the same boat. I think this is one of those cases where, as a parent, you just have to let yourself have a moment and say it doesn't have to be perfect. Because sometimes an impossible task, and children are unpredictable, and it's not really hugely, dare I say it, hugely natural to get a 5-year-old to sit down at a table and work, and also occupy a 3-year-old, and just get on with it. I would say that having a little bit of a balance for both, a little bit of playtime for the 5-year-old, a little bit of pretend work for the 3-year-old at the table, lots of regular breaks, sort of really fun snack times, bit of time outside to kind of burn off that energy. And I would just segment up the day and break it up so that every little kind of unit is manageable. I found my worst days have just been when there's just been a long stretch, and bedtime seems like it's kind of hazy on the horizon of a really long American road with Route 66 written on it, and I don't know how I'm going to get there. But just chunking it up into all those little stages, and then you can tick them off and say, well, I did that, even if that didn't work, I've done that one. Those sorts of things work for me. This is live, isn't it? This is happening.
This is live, and I love that. Well handled, Simon.
Right, hang on. So go in your bedroom. I'll turn the light on for you. Go on. Thank you. Sorry, we've just got these stupid IKEA smart lights where you can turn any light on from any room in the house, except obviously no one has the app except me, and they're not tall enough to reach the light switch.
Oh dear, wonderful.
I bet they sounded like a fantastic idea when you bought them, but you know, the old-fashioned light switch.
We only go to IKEA for the sort of meatballs normally, but this was one of my sort of smarter investments, I think. But hang on. Right. Emma, it's on now. Go on, go. Sorry, right, there you go. Boom, magic of the internet. Yeah. Sorry, I've lost the thread now. We're just talking about trying to get them both to concentrate at the same time. We've actually found we developed kind of like a napping regiment almost with the youngest one, James. As in, it's definitely nap time now. I don't care if you're not tired, it's nap time because Luke needs to get his work done. But I mean, other than that, we found, because obviously James is at preschool as well, it's been quite cool to kind of get him off to preschool, get the home learning in, then get him home again when he comes home after a few hours. But other than that, what you were saying, Claire, about just the kind of, this is your schoolwork and here is your sort of schoolwork, but it's just like a Paw Patrol colouring sheet. And they're all just sat at the table quietly. And of course, the benefit of that is that they all think they're in class. But again, there have been times when if sort of James has been kicking off too much, we'll just kind of like say, okay, let's just give it half hour, stuff like that. So again, you just kind of, I don't know, you just kind of slot it in one way or another. I mean, there have been times when we've put James up for a nap and then we've heard him dancing around the bedroom for an hour. We've been trying to concentrate with the remote learning downstairs as well. So again, you just kind of go with the flow. And I think it's really important, I think, to realise that when if you've got kids in school, you know, the teachers at the other end, they're not expecting miracles sometimes. They will know that there will be days when you get loads of stuff done and there will be days when you don't get as much stuff done. It's just the way it's worked. And again, you know, there is sometimes an anxiety when you get the phone calls home saying, oh, you know, how have they been? It's not because they're checking up on you or anything like that. They're just literally they're literally making sure that you've got all the tools you need and all the help you need to get on with the job that needs to be done. So again, it's literally just try everything until you find something that works for you. And if enforced napping is the way ahead, then that's the way it is.
I quite like the sound of enforced napping for me, actually. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah, I'd quite like to go for one as well, but that's sort of throw the system off course. So,
all right, look, it is. We're coming up on time, so I just wanted to say to you, Simon, and to you, Claire, thank you so much for taking the time, not just to join us, but to share with us, you know, the insight and the stuff that you're doing. It's great, and I will put links to both of your platforms and all of the things we've talked about on the comments below. So, thank you, Simon. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been great.
Vicky, don't go anywhere, because what I'd like to do is I'd just like us, we're going to sum up in a second because we're going to talk about our final show next week. So hang on just a sec. So Vicky, we talked about a season of these shows, didn't we? And we've done 5, and actually next week is going to be our final show for the time being. We'll see how things go with lockdown, but I think we've covered a lot of ground. And we're going to be talking about how do we deal with and maintain sort of lockdown fatigue, not maintain lockdown fatigue, but how do we deal with lockdown fatigue, aren't we?
I think I've totally nailed lockdown fatigue, Dave. I think I'm really good at it, so not worried about that. But yeah, we're going to be talking about that. And I think it's a really important subject because it's going to be our final one of the season, which feels a bit sad, feels like the end of Downton Abbey. But it's going to be that transition back to school and how we start to help think about getting things back to normal, I think is really, really critical. So I hope we're going to touch on that too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we've got 2 more fabulous guests. So we've got Mervyn Harrison from Dope Black Dads and Lucy Flower, who's a primary school teacher from Leeds. And given it's the end of the season, as long as we find out who shot JR, right, I think we'll be done. I think it'll be fantastic. Yeah, and hopefully somebody might send in an email or leave a comment and tell us, because I think you might be a few seasons behind with that one, Dave. Yeah, I left TV behind in the 80s, as you can probably tell. So on that bombshell, let me just remind you that the fabulous folks at Parent Zone do a great job of curating these conversations. They certainly help me facilitate having this conversation with you. But they're out there, obviously active on Facebook and Twitter, and they have a great YouTube channel, which of course we always welcome your subscription to. Give us some feedback, talk to us on the comments, tell us if you liked it, tell us if you didn't. We'll certainly try and make the last one better, and we'll see what we can do for the rest of it. Other than that, I think it just leaves me to say thank you, and thanks again for joining us, and we will see you hopefully all again next week. Thanks everybody.